A young waitress vanished during her late shift at a local restaurant, leaving her family desperate for answers. But 4 years later, when the restaurant is demolished, what construction workers discover makes everyone's blood run cold. The morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Emily Crawford's apartment as she sat at her small kitchen table, nursing a cup of coffee while highlighting a passage in her pediatric nursing textbook. The yellow marker paused over emergency protocols for infant respiratory distress, information she might need during her upcoming hospital rotation. "If I memorize this section tonight, I'll be ahead for next week's exam," she murmured to herself, tucking a strand of chestnut hair behind her ear. At 22, Emily had mastered the art of balancing her nursing studies with her evening shifts at Rosewood's diner. Her phone buzzed with her mother's familiar ringtone. Emily smiled, setting down her highlighter. "Mom, you won't believe what happened yesterday," Emily said excitedly. "The floor supervisor at Central pulled me aside and said I have a real shot at the pediatric ward after graduation." Diana Crawford's voice warmed with pride. "I always knew you'd make it, sweetheart. Those little patients will be lucky to have you." After promising to visit on Sunday, Emily ended the call and checked the time. She still had a few minutes before leaving for her evening shift, just enough to text Jack. Her fingers flew across the screen. 4 years together tomorrow. Still can't believe you put up with me this long. Love you." Across town, Jack Porter smiled as he read the message. The 25-year-old engineer opened his dresser drawer, pushing aside folded T-shirts to reveal a small blue velvet box. Inside nestled a simple diamond ring, elegant but not flashy, just like Emily. He snapped the box shut, heart racing at the thought of tomorrow's anniversary dinner. By 6 o'clock that evening, Emily pushed open the staff entrance to Rosewood's diner, the bell above the door announcing her arrival. The familiar scents of coffee and fried potatoes wrapped around her like a comfortable blanket. "There she is," called Margie from the kitchen window. The 50-something cook had taken Emily under her wing when she'd started 3 years ago. "Ready to break your tip record tonight?" Emily laughed, tying her black apron with her name embroidered in red. "Watch me. Tuesday nights are getting busier lately." The evening unfolded in the choreographed rhythm she knew by heart, refilling coffee cups, remembering that Mr. Grayson wanted extra pickles, making sure Mrs. Winter's tea was steeped exactly 3 minutes. Regular customers greeted her by name, and she remembered their usual orders without asking. "How's school going, Emily?" asked Dr. Henderson, a retired pediatrician who came every Tuesday for the meatloaf special. "Almost there, sir. 1 more year," she replied, deftly balancing 3 plates along her arm. "Still hoping to specialize in pediatrics, just like you." The security camera in the corner silently recorded these interactions. Emily serving the last table at 11:15, chatting briefly with the cook at 11:30 as they began closing procedures. The black and white footage captured her efficiency, her easy smile, the familiar way she moved through the space she knew so well. At 11:47, the camera showed Emily pushing open the back door, 2 garbage bags in hand, still wearing her signature black apron as she stepped into the night. This would be the last footage of Emily Crawford anyone would see. At 12:30, Steve Dalton, the 40-year-old manager, frowned as he counted the register. He glanced at the clock, irritation crossing his features. "Has anyone seen Emily?" he called to the kitchen staff. "She hasn't collected her tips." When no one answered, Dalton checked the staff lockers. Emily's purse sat untouched, her car keys still inside. Her worn denim jacket hung on its hook. Her cell phone rang from inside the bag when he called it. Concern replacing irritation, Dalton pushed open the back door. "Emily?" he called into the darkness. The garbage bags had been properly placed in the dumpster, but there was no sign of the waitress. After a quick search of the immediate area, Dalton returned inside and picked up the phone. At 2:17 in the morning, Diana Crawford was jolted awake by her ringing phone. Fumbling in the darkness, she answered with a groggy, "Hello?" "Mrs. Crawford, this is Detective Robert Hansen from Millfield Police Department. It's about your daughter, Emily." The detective's voice was professionally controlled. "She hasn't been seen for several hours, and we have reason to believe she may be missing." Diana's body went cold, her hand clutching the phone. "Not my girl," she whispered. "Not my Emily." With shaking fingers, she immediately dialed her ex-husband. "Michael, Emily's missing," she choked out. "The police are at the restaurant now." Michael Crawford sat up rigidly in bed, his military training evident even in pajamas. "I'm heading there now," he stated firmly. "I'll find her." As dawn broke over Rosewood's diner, yellow police tape cordoned off the parking lot. Officers conducted a methodical search while Detective Hansen, a weathered man of 54, reviewed the security footage for the fourth time, watching Emily exit through the back door, never to return. Near the dumpster, hidden among the gravel and nearly invisible to casual observation, a rookie officer discovered a small pearl earring and drag marks in the dirt, a detail that made Detective Hansen's expression instantly harden. This was no longer a case of an adult who decided to leave without notice, but something much darker. Detective Hansen crouched beside the small pearl earring, his weathered face grim as he studied the drag marks in the gravel. This subtle evidence transformed the case in an instant. Someone had taken Emily Crawford. "Bag this and mark the area," he instructed the rookie officer, "and get the K-9 unit here immediately." Within the hour, Diana Crawford arrived at the police station, her face ashen as she identified the earring in the evidence bag. "I gave her this pair for her 18th birthday," she whispered, hands trembling. "She was wearing them yesterday." The search intensified as morning stretched into afternoon. German shepherds from the K-9 unit sniffed their way from the restaurant's back door to the dumpster, circling the area repeatedly. The handler frowned, adjusting the leash. "It's strange," he reported to Hansen. "The scent trail ends abruptly here, like she vanished into thin air." Hansen knelt again, placing yellow evidence markers along the drag pattern. "Someone was pulled from here to here," he muttered, pointing to where the marks disappeared. Then nothing. Across town, Michael Crawford spread a city map across his kitchen table, the ex-military man's movements precise as he divided Millfield into search quadrants. His phone never stopped ringing as he called in favors from former service colleagues. "We need people who know what they're doing," he insisted, voice tight with controlled emotion. "Emily's out there somewhere." Meanwhile, 17-year-old Lisa Crawford channeled her fear into action, her red-rimmed eyes contrasting with her determined expression as she organized classmates in the high school parking lot. "Put them on every pole, every store window," she instructed, distributing stacks of hastily printed flyers bearing Emily's photograph. Someone must have seen something. At his engineering firm, Jack Porter stood before his boss, voice breaking. "I can't return to work while Emily's missing. I'm requesting unpaid leave or my resignation." Back at the police station, Detective Hansen interviewed the diner's cook in a small interrogation room. "Did Emily seem normal last night? Talk to anyone unusual? Mention plans after work?" Margie shook her head. She was same as always, talking about her nursing exam, looking forward to her anniversary with Jack. Nothing unusual at all. Outside Rosewoods, forensic technicians meticulously examined the dumpster and surrounding area, collecting gravel samples where the drag marks were found. By late afternoon, a significant lead emerged when Ray Winters, a 60-year-old truck driver, approached an officer at the scene. "I saw something strange last night," he stated. "A white van, no logo or nothing. It came out of the back parking lot around midnight with its headlights off. Nearly hit my rig when it pulled onto the road. Thought it was odd at the time." Hansen and Officer Martinez immediately reviewed traffic camera footage from surrounding intersections, searching for the white van among the sparse midnight traffic. "No visible plate," Martinez noted, freezing on a grainy image. "That seems deliberate." As evening approached, investigators searched Emily's apartment, examining her laptop. Her search history revealed pediatric nursing procedures, gift ideas for Jack, and meticulously organized study notes. One detective found Emily's journal beneath her mattress, the last entry marked with yesterday's date. 350 days until graduation. Then, finally, Central Hospital, here I come. Diana sat on Emily's bed, clutching her daughter's favorite sweater, inhaling her perfume as silent tears streamed down her face. At the police station's conference room, Hansen briefed his team before a wall-mounted city map covered with Emily's photos and a timeline of her last known movements. "The white van is our best lead so far," he concluded. "We're expanding the search radius to 50 miles. As night fell on the second day, an impromptu vigil formed outside Rosewood's diner. Dozens of community members held candles, Diana embraced by Lisa while Michael stood apart, rigid, scanning every face in the crowd as if searching for the culprit. When the vigil dispersed and the second day ended without answers, Hansen's phone rang. The technical team had found partial fingerprints on the dumpster that belonged to neither Emily nor known restaurant employees, and the system had just identified a preliminary match with a man who had served time for stalking in another state 5 years ago. Trevor Walsh, age 37, served 18 months for stalking in Carson City, Nevada, released in 2018, currently on parole. Detective Hansen read from the fingerprint report in the evidence room, his face illuminated by the harsh fluorescent lights. The following morning, officers approached Walsh at his workplace, a local delivery company where he loaded packages onto trucks. The thin man tensed visibly when badges flashed, but didn't attempt to flee. "Yes, I was at Rosewood's that night," Walsh admitted, nervousness evident in his fidgeting hands. "I make deliveries there twice weekly, food supplies and such." In the interrogation room, Walsh produced his delivery truck's GPS records, which Detective Hansen scrutinized carefully. The data confirmed Walsh's location 40 miles away when Emily disappeared. "Made my delivery at 10:30, then headed straight to Oak Ridge afterward," Walsh explained, relief washing over his face when Hansen nodded reluctantly, acknowledging the alibi checked out. With Walsh's lead cooling, Hansen turned his attention to Steve Dalton's employment history, frowning at a conspicuous 6-month gap before he began managing Rosewood's. "Why don't we have information about where he worked before?" Hansen asked Officer Martinez, who was preparing for a follow-up interview with the restaurant manager. That afternoon, Martinez sat across from Dalton in a small interview room, noting how the manager's demeanor had shifted from helpful to irritated. "I've already answered all these questions," Dalton snapped, drumming his fingers on the table. "Yes, I was concerned when she didn't return. No, I didn't see anything suspicious." Outside the city limits, Michael Crawford led a methodical search operation through a wooded area, utilizing drones to visualize inaccessible terrain, while volunteers formed a line to ensure no ground remained unchecked. In Emily's apartment, Jack Porter discovered an old laptop stored in a box under her bed. His hands trembled with hope as he powered it on, praying for any clue to her whereabouts. The screen illuminated to reveal old messages between Emily and her roommate. "Dalton watches me in a weird way sometimes. Nothing too serious, just uncomfortable. He asked me to stay on night shifts because I'm more efficient." Jack immediately brought the messages to Detective Hansen, who took detailed notes. "She never mentioned this to you directly?" the detective asked, his interest in Dalton visibly intensifying. "Never," Jack responded, his voice hollow. "She probably didn't think it was important enough." Later that evening, tension erupted in Diana Crawford's kitchen as she and Michael argued with increasing bitterness. "If you had been more present in her life, maybe you would have noticed something was wrong," Diana shouted, tears streaming down her face. Michael's jaw tightened defensively. "And you encouraged her to work nights at that place to be independent." In her bedroom, Lisa huddled against the wall, listening to her parents' argument while clutching a photo of herself with Emily. "Please come back," she whispered. "We're falling apart without you." Past midnight, Hansen remained in his office, the wall covered with photos, timelines, and maps of the case, red circles marking possible routes the white van might have taken after leaving Rosewood's. An IT technician analyzed grainy footage from a gas station security camera 30 kilometers away. The van passes at 12:47, about an hour after the estimated disappearance, heading north toward the state line. Hansen leaned closer to the enlarged image on the screen. No visible license plate, darkened windows, only a small scratch on the right side serving as a distinguishing feature. At the end of the first week, Hansen updated his team and the Crawford family in the station's conference room. His tone, solemn as exhaustion, lined his face. "We're officially treating this as a kidnapping case," he announced. "The white van theory is now our primary line of investigation." As the investigation team worked tirelessly, a cleaning woman hired at Rosewoods after Emily's disappearance reported something disturbing to Detective Hansen. While sweeping near the back door leading to the rarely used basement, she had found a small piece of black fabric with red thread caught in the door hinge, the same material as the apron Emily wore the night she vanished. The small piece of black fabric with red threading sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Forensic technicians confirmed what everyone suspected. It matches the material of the aprons used by Rosewood's waitresses. Within hours, Detective Hansen secured a warrant for a thorough search of the restaurant's basement. The rarely used space became the center of investigative activity as officers with powerful flashlights illuminated every dusty corner, moving aside old boxes and examining the walls for any signs of disturbance. A structural expert measured the basement dimensions, comparing them with the building's original blueprints. "There's a discrepancy of nearly 10 feet between what's on paper and what we're measuring here," he noted, his expression troubled as he rechecked his calculations. Hansen and Officer Martinez methodically tapped along the walls, listening for hollow spaces, while moving heavy shelving units away from the walls. "Sound everything. Anything that seems recent or out of place," Hansen instructed, his voice echoing in the confined space. Back at the station, a confidential report landed on Hansen's desk. "Steve Dalton, terminated from Bluebird Cafe in Riverdale 2019. Reason: multiple complaints of inappropriate behavior toward female staff." This information, deliberately omitted from Dalton's employment history, cast a sinister shadow over the manager's involvement. Later that afternoon, Hansen confronted Dalton in the interrogation room. "Why did you omit your employment at Bluebird Cafe from your record? Why were you fired from there, Mr. Dalton?" The detective's voice remained measured despite his growing suspicion. Dalton's posture stiffened, nervousness evident beneath his defensive tone. "They were unfounded accusations. I preferred not to mention it to avoid prejudice. I have nothing to do with Emily's disappearance." The following day, Hansen interviewed Eleanor Tanner, the elderly owner of Rosewoods. "Steve has always been an exemplary employee," she stated, hands trembling slightly. "He took full responsibility for the basement renovations last year. Richard and I barely go down there with our age." As the investigation intensified around Dalton, the Crawford family splintered under the weight of prolonged grief. Diana sat in a doctor's office, accepting a prescription for sleeping medication, her voice barely audible. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see my daughter asking for help." Across town, Jack spent hours sitting in Emily's bedroom, holding the engagement ring, speaking as if she could hear him. "We're looking for you, Em. We won't give up, I promise." The ring that should have symbolized their future now represented a painful uncertainty. At home, Lisa worked obsessively on her computer, her academic future on indefinite hold. "I launched FindEmilyC.org today. We already have 3,000 views and people sharing in 17 states, she explained to her mother, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion. Meanwhile, Michael Crawford met with Terrence Williams, a 50-year-old private investigator and former police officer. "The police are wasting time," Michael stated flatly. "I want you to investigate Steve Dalton thoroughly. Anything, no matter how small." Williams began his investigation by interviewing a former Bluebird Cafe employee. "Dalton had a fixation on brunette girls," she revealed nervously. "He always gave them shifts when he would be alone during closing." 1 month after Emily's disappearance, the police station meeting room stood nearly empty during the case update, with only family members and core investigators present. The bulletin board remained covered with leads that had led nowhere, hope diminishing with each passing day. Late that evening, Hansen received Dalton's banking report, his attention immediately drawn to unusual activity. He withdrew significant amounts of cash 3 days before Emily's disappearance, and again 1 week after. No record of what the money was used for. While the Rosewoods diner was closed for maintenance renovations requested by Dalton before his medical leave, a security camera secretly installed by Williams captured a disturbing image. Steve Dalton furtively entering the restaurant at 2:17 in the morning, carrying a grocery bag and heading directly to the basement door. Williams wasted no time bringing the nighttime footage to Detective Hansen, the grainy images clearly showing Dalton's furtive movements. He entered at 2:17, left at 2:43, 26 minutes in the closed restaurant without turning on the main lights. Hansen immediately recognized the significance, driving to a judge's home at 5 in the morning. Standing on the porch in the pre-dawn darkness, he presented his evidence to the sleepy-eyed magistrate. "We need warrants now. We have reason to believe he's directly involved and may be destroying evidence." By sunrise, a tactical team converged on Dalton's modest suburban ranch house, methodically searching each room while Dalton remained conspicuously absent. "Detective, you need to see this," called an investigator from the bedroom. In the back of Dalton's closet, they discovered a shoebox containing dozens of photographs of Emily, in the parking lot, serving tables, walking to her car, all taken without her knowledge, a chronicle of obsession captured through a predator's lens. The forensic technician held up another disturbing find from Dalton's desk drawer. These aren't standard residential keys. They appear to be for some type of industrial lock or security door. Back at Rosewoods, the investigation team returned to the basement with specialized equipment, removing boxes and shelving from the western wall while illuminating the area with powerful lights. A structural expert carefully examined the wall, pointing to subtle tool marks on the surface. "See these tool marks? This section was redone recently, unlike the rest. The mortar is 2 years old at most." In the tanner's office, Hansen questioned the elderly owners while they visibly struggled with the implications of Dalton's betrayal. When exactly did Steve supervise the basement renovations? Richard Tanner consulted financial records with trembling hands. April of last year. He said the structure needed reinforcement and storage improvements. He hired the workers, supervised everything. Cost nearly $15,000. At her computer, Officer Martinez discovered another alarming piece of evidence. Confirmed. Dalton purchased a one-way ticket to Mexico City 3 days after Emily disappeared. He left the country a week later, but there's no official record of his return. Security camera footage from the airport showed Dalton boarding his flight, carrying only a small carry-on bag, nervously looking over his shoulder repeatedly as if expecting to be stopped. By afternoon, a team of engineers arrived at Rosewoods with controlled demolition equipment, preparing to breach the suspicious wall with minimal damage to the surrounding structure. Tension filled the basement as the wall began to give way, revealing first a small dark space behind, then the outline of an old metal door, partially covered by concrete. Hansen's expression shifted from determination to shock as his flashlight beam illuminated what lay beyond the opening. A narrow corridor leading to an old fallout shelter door, secured with a modern padlock. The forensic team documented everything while a technician used a metal cutter to remove the padlock, the sound echoing ominously in the confined space. "Everyone stay back," ordered Hansen, drawing his weapon as the technician stepped aside. "We don't know what's on the other side." With gloved hands, Hansen slowly pulled the heavy door open, its metal hinges protesting with a chilling groan. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing something that made his blood run cold. A small improvised space with a thin mattress, a bucket, water bottles, and on the wall, scratched with some pointed object, dozens of tally marks counting days, the most recent apparently made less than 24 hours ago. The forensics team moved methodically through the hidden chamber, collecting evidence with tweezers and special bags, photographing every disturbing detail of the makeshift prison. The narrow space told a story of prolonged captivity that chilled everyone present to the bone. "Detective, a forensic specialist called, holding up a plastic container. "These food remains are from no more than 2 days ago. Someone was here very recently." Hansen examined the tally marks scratched into the wall, vertical lines organized in groups of 5, the most recent marks visibly fresher than the others. A grim calendar documenting endless days of confinement. "And these," said another technician, carefully bagging several long brown hairs found on the thin mattress. "Length and color match Emily's description. We're rushing DNA testing, but visually they're consistent with her samples." An emergency meeting convened at the police station that afternoon. Hansen, his tactical team, and newly arrived FBI agents coordinated the international search effort. "Dalton was last seen in Merida 3 weeks ago," said the FBI liaison. "We're working with Mexican authorities, but their cooperation has been limited." At the Crawford home, Diana collapsed into sobs when Hansen delivered the news about the hidden chamber. Michael remained rigidly controlled beside her, asking tactical questions in his military cadence, though the slight tremor in his voice betrayed his emotion. "Is there evidence she's still alive?" he asked, the question hanging heavily in the air. "The fresh tally marks and food remains suggest someone was being kept there very recently," Hansen answered carefully. "We're setting up surveillance immediately." That evening, technicians installed high-definition cameras and motion sensors throughout the hidden room and all access points to the restaurant. "If he returns, we'll know instantly," the lead technician assured Hansen. Across town, Lisa Crawford updated her sister's website, replacing the days missing countdown with a new message. "Emily, we're coming. Hold on." For 3 consecutive nights, officers monitored the improvised surveillance center, screens displaying different angles of the restaurant, each team working 12-hour shifts, watching for any sign of movement. On the 3rd night, at 2:34 in the morning, alerts suddenly triggered across the system. The cameras captured Dalton stealthily entering through the back door, carrying a small bag, completely unaware he was being recorded. "Suspect inside the building, heading toward the basement," the surveillance officer whispered into his radio. "All units in position." The tactical team mobilized with practiced efficiency, surrounding Rosewood's diner while communicating through radios at minimum volume. Officers took positions at every exit, weapons ready, waiting for the command to move in. In the basement, Dalton noticed something amiss, one of the hidden cameras reflecting minimally in the dim light. His expression transformed from concentration to sheer panic as realization dawned. He bolted up the stairs and out the side exit, directly into the night. Officers pursued him through dark alleys behind the restaurant, Dalton desperately knocking over trash cans to slow his pursuers while police converged from multiple directions. The chase ended abruptly when Dalton turned into a dead-end alley, finding himself surrounded by officers with weapons drawn. "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" he gasped, breathless and defeated. "It's not what you think." Hours later in the interrogation room, Dalton sat handcuffed to the table, with Hansen and an FBI agent conducting the interview. Recording devices captured every word, while a public defender sat silently beside the restaurant manager. "Mr. Dalton, we found the hideout. We found recent evidence of Emily Crawford there," Hansen said, laying photographs before him. "Where is she now?" Dalton's denials grew weaker as the evidence mounted. The officers methodically presented the photographs of Emily found in his home, the security footage of his nighttime visits, the fresh food remains in the hidden room. After 5 hours of questioning, Dalton's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand," he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "She's not there anymore because someone took her from me," he continued, his voice breaking. "He discovered about her, said I was being careless. He took her to a place where no one will ever find her, and if I tell anything else, he'll kill her." Hansen leaned across the interrogation table, his patience wearing thin. "What do you mean someone took her? Give me details, a name, a description. How did this person contact you? I don't believe a word until I have verifiable information." Dalton's shoulders slumped as he wiped tears from his hollow eyes. Tall, thin guy with a scar on his chin, said he worked for the maintenance company that did service at the restaurant. He noticed strange things in the basement. When did he first approach you? Hansen pressed, recording every detail. 3 months ago. He said he knew about her, knew what I was doing. Dalton's voice trembled, started demanding money to keep quiet. Then he wanted to see her. Then he said I was being sloppy, that someone would eventually find her. While Dalton continued his confession, technicians across town reviewed hundreds of hours of security footage from the restaurant, focusing on the past 3 months, methodically identifying recurring visitors. "Stop," called one analyst, freezing a frame showing a tall, thin man with a visible chin scar talking with Dalton in the back parking lot. Both men's expressions were tense, their body language suggesting confrontation rather than casual conversation. Officer Martinez entered the monitoring room with an identification report. Richard Hayes, 42 years old. Released from prison 8 months ago after serving 5 years for extortion and fraud. Worked temporarily for Service Pro, the company contracted for maintenance at Rosewoods. Back at the hidden chamber, forensic specialists conducted a deeper analysis of the space, making a disturbing discovery. "These stains on the mattress," said the lead investigator, pointing to distinctive patterns, "are consistent with childbirth. There's biological evidence suggesting she delivered a baby here without medical assistance." The news devastated the Crawford family. Diana collapsed upon hearing that her daughter might have given birth in captivity, requiring sedation from the medical team standing by. "My God, my baby girl, and an infant?" she sobbed before the medication took effect. Michael Crawford stood rigidly by the window, his face hardened with barely contained fury. "Find this man. Find my daughter and my grandchild. And I swear to God, if she's hurt." Detective Hansen immediately organized a tactical operation to locate Hayes, dispatching officers to check budget motels on the outskirts of town, showing Hayes's photograph to desk clerks and managers. At the Blue Pine Motel, a desk clerk squinted at the photograph before nodding. "Room 17. Paid a week in advance, cash. Arrived 3 days ago, doesn't go out much." Within 30 minutes, tactical officers positioned themselves around the motel, coordinating their approach to room 17 through radio earpieces. The team leader counted down silently, then gave the signal. The door splintered under the battering ram's impact. Hayes, startled from sleep, lunged toward the bathroom window, only to be tackled by officers who had anticipated this escape route. 2 hours later, Hayes sat defiantly in the interrogation room, denying everything. "Never heard of this girl. Don't know what you're talking about. I want a lawyer." Meanwhile, investigators thoroughly searched Hayes's motel room, methodically examining every potential hiding place. In the bathroom, an officer removed the ventilation grate, revealing a black apron with "Emily" embroidered in red, identical to the one she wore the night she disappeared. When confronted with this evidence, Hayes's defiance crumbled. He stared at the apron on the table, then at the photographs of Emily that Hansen placed beside it. "All right, I know where they are," he said, his voice defeated. "But you need to understand, I wasn't the one who started this, and that baby, that boy is almost 4 years old now." With Hayes's revelation hanging in the air, a rescue operation mobilized with unprecedented urgency. The coordinates he provided led to a remote wooded area 50 kilometers from Millfield, where he claimed Emily and her child were being held in an isolated cabin. "Take a left at that dirt road," Hayes instructed from the back of the police cruiser, handcuffs restricting his movements as officers transported him to guide the operation. "It's another 2 kilometers to the clearing." At the makeshift command center hastily established at the forest's edge, Hansen spread satellite images showing the small isolated structure hidden among dense trees. Tactical teams received final instructions while medical personnel prepared for potential trauma scenarios. "She's been in captivity for almost 4 years," Hansen reminded the tactical team leader. "She'll be disoriented, possibly hostile from fear. And there's a child. Their safety is our absolute priority." Teams approached the cabin cautiously, using the vegetation as cover while communicating through hand signals. Within minutes, they had completely surrounded the perimeter, ensuring no one could escape undetected. Initial thermal imaging revealed crucial information. "We're detecting 2 heat signatures underground," the technology specialist reported. "Adult and child-sized. No movement on the cabin's main level." At Hansen's signal, the tactical team executed a synchronized breach, entering simultaneously through all openings. Their methodical sweep found the cabin's main floor eerily empty, a facade of normality with minimal furnishings suggesting infrequent use. "Detective," called an officer, noting how a rug in the center of the room seemed misaligned with the surrounding floorboards. Moving it aside revealed a disguised trapdoor crafted from the same material as the floor. Tension gripped every officer as they slowly opened the hatch, flashlight beams illuminating a crude staircase leading to darkness below. The silence broke with a terrified female voice from the shadows. "Please, don't hurt my son. Please, I'll do anything." The desperation in those words sent chills through even the most seasoned officers. The police negotiator responded with practiced calm. "Emily? Emily Crawford? We're from Millfield Police. We've come to take you home. You and your son are safe now." Complete silence followed, then came a disbelieving sob. "You know my name? You found me?" Paramedics descended carefully into the underground room, discovering a scene that would haunt them forever. Emily Crawford, hair long and matted, severely emaciated, eyes adapted to darkness, protectively embraced a small, frightened boy who buried his face against her chest. The paramedics' initial assessment was conducted with gentle movements and soothing words. "You're dehydrated and malnourished, but your vital signs are stable. We'll take you both to the hospital now." The child, approximately 3 years old, had never seen people besides his captors. Thomas trembled violently, hiding his face when paramedics approached. "Mommy, who are they? I'm scared," he whimpered, clinging desperately to Emily. As rescuers helped Emily onto a stretcher, she shielded her eyes from even the dim light of the cabin, the brightness overwhelming after years of darkness. Thomas remained clutched tightly against her as she whispered repeatedly, "We're going home, baby. We're going home." Outside, the afternoon sunlight forced Emily to keep her eyes closed entirely, her pale skin almost translucent after years without sun exposure. Thomas buried his face in her shoulder, overwhelmed by sensations he'd never experienced. The breeze, distant bird calls, the vastness of open space. While the ambulance departed toward Millfield Hospital with its precious cargo, Detective Hansen received an alarming call. Steve Dalton had been found dead in his cell, apparent suicide, but the note left behind contained disturbing information suggesting other powerful individuals were involved in Emily's captivity, and that the complete truth remained far from revealed. Detective Hansen stared at the suicide note in his hand, the implications sending a chill through his body. Men who came to see her, and threats to maintain silence, suggested a conspiracy far beyond what they'd imagined. Dalton's death now seemed less like guilt-driven suicide and more like a convenient elimination of evidence. At Millfield Hospital, a specialized trauma team awaited as the ambulance arrived. Emily and Thomas were immediately transferred to a private wing with enhanced security protocols. The bright fluorescent lights caused both mother and child to cry out in pain, their eyes unaccustomed to normal illumination after years underground. Across town, Diana Crawford nearly collapsed when her phone rang with Detective Hansen's news. "Alive? My Emily is alive? And a grandson?" she repeated, her neighbor rushing to catch her as her knees gave way. Michael Crawford drove recklessly toward the hospital, tears silently tracking down his usually stoic face. "Held on, my girl. I knew you would," he whispered, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Inside the examination room, doctors documented Emily's condition with clinical precision and barely concealed horror. Multiple fractures in the right arm and ribs, poorly healed. Signs of recurring, untreated infections. Chronic malnutrition, the lead physician dictated, while a nurse photographed the evidence. Meanwhile, a child psychologist attempted to evaluate Thomas, who had crawled beneath the hospital bed, refusing to emerge from his mother's proximity. When the room lights were fully illuminated, he screamed in terror, covering his eyes and pressing himself against the wall. The first reunion came an hour later, when Diana entered the hospital room hesitantly. Emily looked at her mother with confusion, recognition slowly dawning in her hollow eyes. "Mom, is it really you?" she whispered, voice cracking from disuse. Diana carefully embraced her daughter, both women dissolving into sobs while Thomas watched warily from his corner, analyzing this strange woman who made his mother cry. Minutes later, Michael arrived, stopping rigid in the doorway, military posture betraying the emotional storm within. Emily extended a trembling hand toward him. "Dad, you still have the same haircut," she said, a ghost of her former humor briefly illuminating her gaunt face. At the county jail, investigators examined Dalton's cell, photographing his body and the handwritten note. Handwriting appears consistent with his previous records, but will verify it wasn't written under coercion, the forensic analyst noted. The note itself contained damning information. "It wasn't just me. There were others, important men who came to see her. They said they would kill my family if I talked. I can't live with this anymore." Back at the station, Hansen analyzed Dalton's phone records with growing concern. He made monthly calls to different burner phones, always on the same day, always similar duration, he observed, marking the pattern on his timeline. Later that evening, Emily spoke haltingly with a trauma specialist, her medication allowing moments of clarity. There were others besides him. A man they called Doctor came to check if we were healthy enough, she revealed, her thin fingers nervously plucking at the hospital blanket. Lisa finally arrived at the hospital after dark, freezing in the doorway at the sight of her sister, now a shadow of her former self, with a child clinging desperately to her side. "Em, it's me, Lisa," she said, voice faltering as the reality of her sister's condition became clear. In the hospital corridor, Jack stood motionless, unable to enter the room, clutching the small engagement ring in his pocket. Silent tears fell as he observed Emily through the window, interacting with her family, simultaneously the woman he loved, and a stranger who had endured unimaginable horrors. During a brief moment alone with Detective Hansen the next morning, Emily revealed something that changed everything. The man they called Doctor. He wore a white coat with Central Hospital's logo, and once I saw his badge when he thought I was sleeping. It was the same hospital where I was going to do my nursing internship. Emily's revelation about the doctor sent shockwaves through the investigation. Within 24 hours, investigators cross-referenced Central Hospital staff against the description Emily provided, leading them to Dr. Lawrence Wells, a respected pediatrician whose impeccable reputation masked a terrible secret. Detective Hansen waited in the hospital parking lot as Wells completed his evening rounds. When the 56-year-old doctor approached his luxury sedan, Hansen stepped out of the shadows. "Dr. Wells, we need to talk about your visits to Emily Crawford's captivity." Wells froze momentarily before bolting across the parking lot, only to find agents strategically positioned at every exit. His face transformed from panic to resignation as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The investigation expanded rapidly, revealing a network of exploitation that had operated for years. Records in Wells' hidden safe connected him to 3 other missing persons cases, all systematically silenced or discredited. Phone records confirmed regular communications with Dalton using disposable phones, exactly matching the pattern Hansen had identified. Meanwhile, Emily and Thomas began their long journey toward recovery. Physical therapy sessions became the cornerstone of Emily's routine, her determination visible despite the pain, as she relearned movements that prolonged confinement had compromised. 3 more repetitions, her therapist would encourage, "You're rebuilding strength every day." For Thomas, the outside world remained overwhelming. During sensory therapy, specialists gradually introduced new stimuli, different textures to touch, varied sounds to identify, foods he had never tasted. His first day in the hospital garden became a milestone, initially terrified by the open space, hiding his face against Emily's shoulder before cautiously touching the grass with curious fingers. Diana transformed her home to accommodate her daughter and grandson, installing special curtains that partially blocked light for Thomas's sensitive eyes, and creating a small, safe space in the corner of his room that mimicked the dimensions of captivity, but with the door always open. Michael, channeling his military background, installed comprehensive security systems throughout the house. "You're safe now," he explained patiently to Emily. "No one comes in without us knowing." The first time Thomas experienced rain, he screamed in terror at the unfamiliar sound, then laughed with wonder as he tried to catch droplets in his small hands. Emily watched through the window, tears streaming down her face at the simple joy her son had been denied for years. At the university campus, Lisa presented her research project on reforms to missing persons protocols. "The Emily Law can save lives and prevent other families from experiencing what we endured," she explained to her professors, her personal connection giving profound weight to her academic work. Jack's first visit to Diana's home created a delicate moment. The awkward silence between him and Emily eventually gave way to careful conversation about simple things: the weather, a book she had started reading, the progress Thomas was making. Both recognized they were different people now, their shared past both connecting and separating them. Recovery brought unexpected challenges. When a door accidentally slammed, Emily experienced a severe flashback, hyperventilating until Diana gently coached her. "You're home, Emily. You're safe. Look around. Tell me 5 things you can see." 6 months after the rescue, the FBI held a press conference announcing the dismantling of the exploitation network and identification of other possible victims. Dr. Wells and Richard Hayes received multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. On a warm autumn evening, Emily fulfilled the promise she had made to Thomas during captivity. Standing on the beach with her family watching from a distance, she held Thomas's hand as he touched the ocean for the first time. His expression of pure wonder reflected the vastness his mother had described during years of darkness. As Thomas ran along the water's edge, his genuine laughter echoing across the beach, Emily opened her recovery journal beside her on the sand. The fresh entry read, "Today I'm not just surviving, I'm beginning to live again." And on the following page, a list titled "Promises to Keep," with several items still unmarked, including one prominently circled, "Return to Central Hospital, not as a victim, but as the nurse I always dreamed of becoming."